So I don't want you to think because I talk about God and because I grew up in Southern Baptist, lots of people think I'm like this hellfire Christian, and I'm not, because of my past and my drug use and all the things that I've done, which you understand.
I totally understand.
When you don't have self-love, you search for others to love you and fill that void. And so with that being said, I don't want you to be scared. You can share anything you want to with me. I would never judge you. You're here. Trust me, out of the people I've interviewed, you're here and you're first because you're the right person for the job.
I've kind of always wanted to work out some kind of advocacy for people that have been through what we've been through. I just never know where to start. I'm a great starter. It's the see-through and ending that I have trouble with sometimes. But I have great ideas, and then, but a lot of them I do follow through on. So, but it's just been the starting and the stopping, trying to get everything to go.
I'm going to move this pen because I will continue to pick it up. Let me know when you're ready, Josh.
Oh, now he's been going the whole time. Well, go.
Okay. I guess I want to start, Alan, by saying thank you for taking the time to sit down with me. I think it's most important we start explaining, what is God to you?
What is God to me? Well, he's my friend. He's an all-powerful being, and he's the way to get through your life with a power greater than yourself.
I completely agree.
Yeah, so he's just an all-infinite being. And he's not sitting on a chair in a robe with a beard, with a staff going, you're all going to hell because you didn't do this. No.
Or you
That's
didn't.
not mine, so.
You didn't follow a certain law or
Right.
a certain order.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I oftentimes, when talking about my sexual abuse, I tell people in that moment, there's two things that I knew. Number one, I was frozen in fear. It was almost like an out-of-body experience. And number two, I felt a presence of being protected. And although it's hard for people to understand that, I feel like you can. Can you take me back to that moment, that first time that you remember being sexually abused?
Well, just the little backstory on it is I didn't realize any of it till I was in my 30s. I had blocked it out so much completely that I didn't have any idea, especially at that young of an age. When I was probably 9 or 10 or something, when a family member had molested me, but it wasn't bad. It was just, somebody touching me that I didn't think, it didn't feel right. I wasn't scared about it or anything. It just didn't feel right.
And I think many people question, when you say you don't know, I was 24 years old when I began therapy, and I didn't know I was sexually abused. I thought everyone got touched and fondled, and I thought everyone played games because that's what I was exposed to. How was I going to know any different? And so I think that's important to explain. So what brought you to a moment of accepting that it was sexual abuse? Take me back there for a minute.
I'd gotten sober through a 12-step program, which I've been sober for 18 years now. And
wow,
thank you, that was part of the reason that this was allowed to happen, that my mind opened up. So I'm a bit of a photographer, so I was walking down Turtle Creek one day, and I was probably about 6 years sober, I think. And I took a picture, the lens closed, the lens opened, and at the same time, a lens in my mind opened. And I've always been this little boy standing in a doorway looking at something, and I could never see what I was looking at. And then that lens opened, and bam.
And how old were you? Or I know sometimes I ask how old you were, and because you're a child, you don't understand age, but we oftentimes remember places, or we remember the clothes we were wearing, or we remember what grade we were in school. So how have you pinpointed that back to what age you were?
I haven't. I've never been able to. Actually, my childhood was a bit of a blur. I don't have fixed dates. We didn't really go to school a lot. We moved around a lot. There was always something going on, and I never really knew where I was until, I guess I always kind of can put it with school, but I remember I started 5th grade, and we moved to a small town with my stepfather, and we lived there until I grew up and all those kinds of things, and all of the madness ended. So that was probably 10 or 11.
10 or 11, yeah.
When things finally became safe. So I would say probably at least when I was 5 years old, all of it kind of started. And it started with a family member, and I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew there was a lot of violence going on, and I was somehow in the middle of it. And did I do anything? Was there something wrong with me? What was going on? And I can just remember certain sections of it, of him grabbing me and taking wild turkey out of the bottle and pouring it down my throat and making me drink it, and then going into a dark room. And a little bit of bits and pieces of things in the dark room come back, but they were...
Isn't that interesting, because you said 18 years you've been sober? Mm-hmm. Again, congratulations on that. But isn't it amazing to be a child at 5 years old and someone use alcohol to pleasure themselves, but then you grow into your adolescence, teenage years, and continue to use alcohol to the point, I assume at some point in time, you were self-medicating with alcohol?
Well, I was actually a straight-laced little kid, and all through high school, I didn't do anything. I didn't do a thing. I was too frozen most of the time. I was terrified in high school of everything and everybody, and I basically went home, went to school, and back. And that was about it. And that really didn't start until I was, in 5th or 6th grade, when I finally got some kind of idea of rhythm and time. So once I started doing that, I remember I think I got drunk at, what is that thing? The graduation party, whenever that was. So I did that, and it was terrible, so I thought, I will never do this again. So I decided not to. So then, I guess around 18 or 19, I came out of the closet and moved out on my own, and that's when I had moved in with a friend of mine, and I was thinking to myself of, well, what do I do now? There's no rules, there's no curfews, there's no keys, there's no nothing, it's just me, and I'm free. So I got wasted, and then I discovered that I liked it. So I started doing alcohol first, and then marijuana came after that. And then I slowly graduated to bigger and better things. So speed and ecstasy and acid and cocaine and...
So looking back now, do you think that block of not understanding what you were exposed to and what you went through as a child, do you think that blank space that you described, do you think using the alcohol and the drugs was a way to self-medicate it, to maybe fill that void or that gap?
I do now, yeah. Yeah, I think that, because the more I got sober, as you get sober, they talk about an onion and the layers peel off. Well, as the layers peeled off, the pain was terrible. Because you're not, whenever I felt anything, any kind of pain, a thought, anything, I drank. And then if that didn't numb it, then I did speed. If that didn't numb it, I did the more I could do, the more oblivion I could come up with, the better I felt. But the second all of that stuff started wearing off, the panic set in, the depression set in, and my life just went crazy.
And so were you waking up and just drinking all day long?
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. How would my day start? A shot of vodka with a Vicodin. We called them Vicatels. And then usually... we'd smoke a little pot, do a line of speed, and I'd go to work.
So many people that I speak with, and myself included, we had nightmares as children. We always thought we were growing up in haunted houses. We couldn't get a good night's rest. We had to position our bed so that we watched the doorway. Does any of that sound familiar to you?
A little bit. I wouldn't sleep by windows. And I usually wouldn't go to sleep unless somebody else was with me. like my grandmother or somebody like that. I was very afraid of being by myself, because when I was alone, stuff happened. No matter where I was in the house or what I was doing, something always happened. And so, hell, I still check my closets today. I still turn the lights on and look under the bed just to make sure. Don't scare me in the shower, whatever you do. Don't sneak up on me. And that's only happened a couple of times. When I'm walking down the hall and someone jumps out and scares me to death, I almost killed him. It freaked me out so bad. I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? He's like, what are you getting so upset about? Now, you might not want me to explain it, but it was a very adverse reaction. Yeah. But
it's that sense of I don't have control.
Yeah, it's that memory of that's what takes you back. Yeah, that's what my perpetrator did. Yeah. Is he would hide around corners. He would get on the air conditioning ventilation system of the house and say, Alan, I'm coming to get you, and start a countdown. So I'm hiding in a corner, terrified when he gets to 1 because he's coming to get me. Yeah. So that's what I grew up with.
You talked about, you shared with me an incident of someone pouring whiskey.
Yeah, I was very young too. And it was one of my, another family member. Everybody was a family member, but it was a male family member. And he would grab the bottle of wild turkey and just force it down my throat. And, I'm yelling and screaming, and he's holding me down and making me drink it. And then we go into a dark room, and that's usually where I don't remember very much of the dark room. But even that's starting to come back now, and it's just not good stuff.
So do you think that him using the wild turkey, do you think that has any hold to growing into an alcoholic as you grew older?
No, I don't think so, because I had such an adverse effect for me that I hated it. I mean, I was scared to death of it. I didn't know what it was. It tasted terrible, and it was very much connected with that violence of what was going on with me. So, and asking that question, it's interesting that I did grow up and become an alcoholic. Yeah. I don't know if it was always being adopted and everything. You don't know if it's inbred in you. But most of my family...
You're saying just your genetics, being adopted, you wouldn't know, right?
So, but as I got older and started using and drinking, it just made me feel better. I finally was strong. I could talk. I wasn't intimidated by a lot of people.
So it gave you superpowers.
Yeah, it gave me power is what it gave me. Yeah, it gave me superpowers and made me likable because I...
So let's go deep for just a minute. I know guys, women, we feel with emotions. Men feel.
Especially homosexuals. Are you kidding? We feel everything. Right there, darling. I feel it all.
Let's go deep for a minute. What are the struggles emotionally? Take me inside you for a minute emotionally. What did you struggle with before you started therapy besides self-hate?
Well, I struggled with, I guess emotionally, I mean, there were still the outside things of the drugs and the alcohol and the self-hate and being scared all the time, panic attacks. Depression, but I didn't know what the names of those things were. And that was part of the reason when I started drinking, it calmed all that down. And I didn't hear that voice of "you're ugly." And I didn't feel the panic, and I didn't feel the fear. So that was a lot of the stuff that I dealt with. And then, like I said, when I started getting sober in 97, a lot of the reasons that I wouldn't get sober was because that's the way I felt when I started to not drink or use drugs. I felt that fear and that panic and that, the wanting to commit suicide and all those kinds of things.
The truth.
Yeah, well, the truth of who I was in there. It was the pain of it all, but I didn't know where it was stemming from. It was just pain. And so I was really afraid if I quit drinking, that was really me. Was I really that fear and that much pain, and that's what I'm going to have to live with if I quit drinking? That's who I am. And I didn't know who I was, so it was very scary for me to decide to give up alcohol and drugs. But you get to a point of alcohol and drug abuse that it's killing me. It is killing me. I didn't know what else to do. I ran out of people, I ran out of money, I ran out of jobs, I ran out of everything. So a lot of people say in the 12-step program that it was the last house on the block for me. So that's where I ended up. And once I got there and you took the drugs and alcohol away, well, I was that little kid in that room. I was that little kid in all those rooms where all the darkness was, except I didn't know what was happening in the darkness. I was just raw, and I had no idea what was going on with me. So then, you start working the steps, and you start discovering your higher power, which I call God. And then you just start slowly, amen, it's true. You start going back into your past, because that's what part of the 12-step program is going back into your past. But I didn't realize that that's what my problem was. I went to a couple of psychiatrists and, therapists, and they're like, do you think you have trouble with drugs and alcohol? I'm like, no, I have a trouble with life, dude. What do you mean? I don't have any trouble with that. But you take all that away and you discover it is life. And then, so in part of that process is when some of the sexual abuse started coming up for me. And so there's if I can tag somebody, it's called the Family Place. And I know there's an office in Dallas. I don't know where else they are in the country. But I went there and I started therapy. And my therapist started asking about those particular instances in my childhood, that one specific one with my stepbrother. So I couldn't tell her anything, because then she's like, okay, well, that's what happens. Now I need you to be extremely specific and tell me detail and blow by blow what they did to you. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to do it. And that's what my head would say. But I was like, well, maybe next time. And then I'd never go back. Right. But then it kept coming. It kept coming up. And I couldn't drink over it anymore. I couldn't do drugs over it anymore. I couldn't sex over it anymore. I couldn't eat over it anymore. So I went back to the office, and I was sitting down one day, and I was waiting for my appointment to start. And there was this little pamphlet. I wish I still had it. It was a little green pamphlet. And I read about it. And it said, do you have problems with drugs and alcohol? Do you have problems keeping a job? Do you have problems, do you see ghosts? Do you see spirits? And are you depressed and have anxiety? And I was like, yes. So it said, if you answered yes to most of these questions, you're a victim of sexual abuse. Wow. And I was really blown away. I'm like, I can't keep a job. What's that? What does that have to do with being molested? Or, somebody touching me when I was a kid? What does that have to do with it? So I went into the office. I sat down with my therapist, I showed her the pamphlet, and I said, is all of this true? And she said, yep, it's absolutely true.
And so from that moment, just releasing, because you're not in the fetal position with me today. So
No,
how do you get to the moment where you can now share your story to help other people dig deep and want to, for their own selves, open up and share what's hidden?
One day at a time. One day that you allow yourself to think about it. And you have to give yourself a time limit. I do. I can't, if I sit around and think about this all day long, I wouldn't be here. I would still be off in the field somewhere. But you have to give yourself time, and also to realize once you've faced that fear of how scary that was, and how they said, don't ever tell anybody it's our secret, don't ever tell anybody it's our secret, don't ever tell anybody it's our secret, was ingrained in my head. So I finally told somebody my secret. It was a big deal. And so when you tell them that, it's a real turning point. Because finally, at least that part of it is over. The secret's out. And you don't have to feel bad about it. But the first thing my therapist told me was that she was sorry that happened to me, and it was not my fault.
But I think that's truly our integrity. I think the reason that, we were born, oftentimes I get the question, why would God allow this to happen to someone? And I say to them, we're free spirits. God doesn't allow things to happen. When you think about it, we're born into this world as children. We don't have any clothes to wear. We don't have any food to eat. And for these first so many years of our lives, we're completely taken care of and live by faith.
Well, that and these big giants, these big people, that's what they are. They're these big giants talking or walking around you, and you're totally reliant on them. And they don't come with instruction manuals either. So a lot of this stuff has to do with forgiveness too. I've had to forgive. You don't have to forgive everybody, but I did. All my perpetrators, most of them are dead now, but I could hold a grudge against them for the rest of my life till I died, but it would be a thorn in my heart forever if I kept that in. So when I pulled the thorn, there was a big spot there. There was an open wound. It had to heal. So it's healed, but part of that is the spirit of forgiveness. You have to forgive everybody for everything, and you don't have to like them, but you can still forgive them. And that's what I've done with a lot of it. And the more I talk about what happened to me, I hope that it gives more people a step forward to say an inspiration to go out and tell their story to a person they trust.
I want to say congratulations, 18 years sober. Congratulations on taking your life back. You've had a past that's not easy to identify, and it's sure not easy to own up to, and it's hard to find something to be proud in. Yeah. But I want to thank you for sitting down with me and sharing your story.
No, thank you. It was an honor. It was so great to get your phone call. And then we had to postpone, so I've been waitful and grateful for about 2 months now. Yeah. So I was like, I can't wait. And then it got closer, and I was like, this is going to be so much fun. And that's the one thing I think people need to understand, is you can turn tragedy into happiness. And that's what happened to me. I turned my tragedy into a happy moment.
And now you're helping other people.
Yep, I'm helping everyone, so I hope somebody gets something out of all this. And if nothing else, just the bravery to say to yourself that I can do it, and go talk to somebody about it.